Welcome to the Hope and Focus podcast, where hope has a voice. We highlight the journeys of those impacted by Leber congenital amaurosis and other inherited retinal diseases, and the work driving change. Thanks for being here.
Welcome, everyone, to the Hope and Focus podcast. I'm your host, Ben Shaberman. I'm the Science Communications Advisor to Hope and Focus, and I am delighted to have as my guest Vivien Hillgrove, whose wonderful autobiographical documentary film called Vivien's Wild Ride premiered on PBS in late January. And I absolutely love the film. About halfway through the film, I was determined to reach out to Vivien and have her on the podcast. And Vivien, I'm delighted that you accepted and you decided to talk about your life and the film with us here at Hope and Focus.
It's my honor. I have to tell you, thank you so much for inviting me, and especially since you guys are so much fun to talk to. This is terrific. Thank you.
Well, the fun is ours, most definitely. And I just want to tell our listeners, the film, again, it's wonderful. It is, in fact, a wild, beautiful ride, and it follows Vivien through her remarkable life. And woven throughout the film is her journey with progressive vision loss from age-related macular degeneration. Her journey with vision loss is a key thread in the film. And it's no surprise that this documentary is a brilliant movie because Vivien has more than 50 years of experience as an editor for both narrative and documentary films. In the 80s and the 90s, she worked as a dialogue editor on many feature films, including Amadeus, Blue Velvet, and The Right Stuff. Talk about a diverse trio of films.
True.
And then later, Vivien worked as a narrative editor on acclaimed films such as Henry and June and The Unbearable Lightness of Being, a little more refined. And then she went on to edit several really important documentary films that were made by Lourdes Portillo and Deanne Borche-Liam. And Deanne is a co-producer on the documentary Vivien's Wild Ride. And I want listeners to understand that Vivien's Wild Ride includes options for audio description and closed captioning, so it is accessible. So Vivien, I want to start our conversation talking about your early life, and then as we cover some ground there, we'll move into your macular degeneration journey. But tell us where you grew up, what your family life was like. You were the oldest of 5, if I remember correctly.
Correct. It was fantastic, the childhood I had. I'm very lucky. And I grew up in South San Francisco in a very suburban type of a neighborhood, but I could always take the bus to San Francisco, which was the big city. And my mother was kind of, really an interesting person. And she was very easygoing in terms of, like, we would all turn the sofas upside down and create forts in the living room. And she would just think that was terrific. And she also read cards and read palms. So there was a little bit of a gypsy in her. And so what that did for us kids is opened up the conversation to be about many things, to be in your life many things that are possible, and including, being able to read palms, apparently. But she let us really roam the house, be nuts. And I loved my brothers and sister because they were, they're all younger. And I got to be kind of the surrogate mom in a way. Anyway, it was just marvelous. We had a great time and pretty easygoing. My father worked to the bone. He worked very, very hard, and he was an estimator for the city of San Francisco and worked in the ferry building. So it was quite a treat to go visit him. So, I think we were a little crazy for the suburbs, but that was okay because it was beautiful inside of our house and full of ideas and fun and music, lots of music, because my father played piano.
That's wonderful to be in such an open and it sounds like creative environment. And what time was this? Was this in the 60s?
Early 60s, 50s. I was born in 46.
Okay.
So from then on, I think we moved when I was in first grade in terms of the suburban neighborhood and everything.
Right, right. So that was a time when people were literally letting their hair down and exploring all kinds of interesting stuff, chemically, musically, and so on.
Correct. Right. That's right. It was really, I came into the sort of the latter part of the bohemian world, which is very artistic, and then moved into what I would call the psychedelic San Francisco. And it was all very fascinating to me because I thought I'm really interested in the different types of people that are, in this world. And it really served me well to have that kind of background in terms of being very interested in like not being worried about the person I was kind of looking at sideways and trying to understand. Because I have always done that in my entire life is kind of, oh, I want to see what this person's like. And I started out in nursing as one of my first career choices. And I was going to go into psychiatric nursing, which I loved. It was wonderful. And then actually switched to art and filmmaking and things like that. But it was such a fertile time of being able to change your mind, like re-identify yourself, and then try and see how that worked with your identity. Did it work or not work? What parts were scary? What parts, were not happening to you personally and you avoided? And I think that because the 60s were such an open-minded kind of time, I feel you had to be really careful. And I think that is true for today, for sure. And so open, but loose at the same time. So I think I did pretty well on that one.
Certainly. And I think that growing up in that environment provided a nice foundation for you when you moved into the film world. But as we learn in the movie, there was an event that happened, something that happened to you. I believe you were in high school that really was a major change in your life, and it had long-lasting ramifications. It had a long-lasting impact. Can you talk about that?
Yes. When I was 17 and it was my last year of high school, so that was very good. I found out I was pregnant. And so I was sent to first grandmother's house in the city at this very, very noir kind of building. And then I was sent to the home for unwed mothers. And during that time, it was very interesting because very few people, women in particular, kind of say, oh, it isn't possible that you had a good time there because it was, fill in the blank. But I had a wonderful time there because I was with a lot of other girls like myself. And that sense of community became really strong to me. And also this idea of the bad girl, right? We were the ones that were, not invited to proper dinners. We were the ones that they don't want their sons to date and on, all the prejudices that were at that particular time. And so in the home for unwed mothers, I did meet this marvelous woman who was a pianist. And so through her music, I was able to quell the sadness, if you will. And I felt like I was back home with my father's piano playing. So there was various people who were very, comforting. And everybody treated me quite well. And I was terrified of going to the third floors. And so I opted for my duty there is to wash floors. And it was really such a good idea because it's a way of physically removing your sadness or your fear just by being busy doing something like that. And we all contributed, of course, all the girls contributed. So the night that I gave birth was one of the most beautiful things and also one of the saddest things of my life. And when I saw my child, one of the nurses lifted her up, I felt this attraction that was magnetic, and I just wanted to go in there and grab her. And it was so strong, it went beyond space and time. And that's what I felt. But then I was unable to keep her for many reasons, and one of my age and one of shame at that particular time that would be inflicted on my parents. So I kept thinking about her age at different, when she was born, her birth date, and like, oh, she's 4 years old now. She's 5 years old. And it never ended in my life because that bond is so strong between mother and child. And so I envisioned her with all these scenarios, which was great. So I made up stories that, oh, she's a ballet dancer, or she works in the theater, or she has a lot of family, because I have an Irish family. We're just tons of it.
There's so much more to the story of your daughter, and thank you for being so open and honest about how it felt in that home and what it felt like to give birth and then give your daughter up. But we learn in the movie a lot more about that situation. I don't want to give away too much. No spoilers here.
Right. Thank you for that. That's very kind.
Sure, I want people to watch the movie.
Yes.
So you move on in life and you sort of stumbled into sound editing. Can you talk about how that happened?
Well, a couple of different avenues. One, that I had met somebody in this women's bar, and she had a friend who went to San Francisco State getting her master's. And so that woman then asked me, could I run sound for her? And I didn't know anything about sound at the time. So anyway, to make a long story short, she liked my work. She moved to Canada to teach, and then she recommended me to Studio 16, which my first real entrance into the film business. And we did industrials and, that kind of thing for Schilling Glock, or, very funny places with funny names. And then from there, I worked on my first 35 millimeter, and also narrative, we call it, narrative film. And that was for families and, GP rating and that kind of thing. So from that first film, I ordered a editing room I wanted to rent for this one film, and it was Coppola's American Zoetrope. And just being within the same building as this incredible filmmaker, Francis Coppola, and everybody was there at that time. Phil Kaufman had White Dawn. The conversation was happening with editors Walter Murch, and it was such an amazing time. These guys were like reinventing film, and we called them the Hollywood brats in many ways. And so I think from that, I was at least exposed to them in a way that they saw me all the time going down the hallways and things like that. So that it's like being in the right place at the right time. And that was perfect. And even though this may have been the worst film I'd ever seen in my life that we were working on, it still put me in the building, right? And so later, I was just really fortunate to actually work with some of these, Hollywood brats. And it was extraordinary. And I came in really as a dialogue editor because I really loved the kind of minute types of moves that you made in dialogue editing. And even with a razor blade, I would scratch out like a fade out that was in the mag track, which you call mag track, which is where the audio is. And so with a little razor blade, I would actually make this fade out that helped the mixer of the film work with the audio tracks much easier because I made this little tiny fade out in the sound. And so it was the physicality of working in analog was so marvelous because, first of all, everything was heavy and would probably last 1,000 years. I mean, it's just unbreakable. this world of sound and sound effects and, all the rest of it, picture cutting and everything. So yeah, it just kind of pole vaulted from one film to another film, and then I got a reputation. And then the funny thing is I started out getting my first film because of my friend Tom Bullock, who was a filmmaker himself. He says, "Viv, I'm going to recommend this to them for you, and I want." And he said, "You're just really a great picture cutter, but you really suck at sound." So I thought, okay, I'm going to get really good at this, right? I mean, the things that you are the worst of in this life, somehow you work with them so diligently and crave the information that it ends up being better than anything else you're doing. So I was very thankful to be then known as a supervising sound editor, and got to meet also some of the greats in sound of, Alan Splett and various people who he did Eraserhead and also Blue Velvet as a sound engineer. So everything was exciting. I mean, it was, no matter how simple or, non-controversial it was, but it was such a magnificent thing to be around that energy that was just, you just caught it right away. And it was like working on this film, this huge kind of meeting of the minds, and Solzhenitsyn especially. And it for me, it was like living in a dreamland. This world of film became some way of being other people and other magnificent characters, and being there for a little while this movie went on, visiting this very magical kind of a place. So I've always been grateful, incredibly grateful, for being able to have kind of wandered in to the film business and give thanks every day.
Well, we can hear your passion in this conversation. We see your passion in the film as well. And I remember in the film, you say that editing is like a jigsaw puzzle. And that seems to be a very apt metaphor. You're putting all these different pieces together to make something really incredible.
It's such a wonderful kind of thing to kind of work in this puzzle world, because where a lot of the stuff happens is in the transitions. Like, does this scene pop up as an idea in this later scene? And it's like trying to do, the New York Times puzzle like 20 times more difficult.
And there's a lot more to your story as you move on in film editing into documentaries and relationships. But I want to spend some time talking about the onset of age-related macular degeneration, which, as we're talking, is almost the opposite of putting a film together. This is where things start coming apart a little bit, and it progresses. Can you talk about what it was like to first notice some vision issues and your diagnostic journey?
Yes. Well, the macular degeneration really happened about 2 years, 3 years before making the film. But as soon as I started having symptoms, I didn't really think of it as progressing, because I was holding on to my vision so tightly. You can talk yourself into anything. But so I just so wanted, because I'm a visual person, I had a visual 50 years plus. And so it seemed like in the film I say, who am I without this vision? Who am I? And I must say, one of the most advantaged things, one of the most important things to me at the time was translate that degeneration of macular degeneration on a film. And I would tell my editor, I'd say, "Oh, well, it looks like this, and the words are starting to move around, and this kind of crazy stuff is happening. Can you make that on the screen, like with effects?" And then he'd try something, and then I'd come back, and we'd go back and forth and stuff, and I'd be like, "Got it. That's exactly what it feels like to be in a car and see the cars go over to your lane and a double yellow line, and you think you're going to like have a crash any second. So I started putting my foot down to hit the brake all the time. But it progressed slowly, which thank God. And I think that probably happens to most people. And it also is a sign of aging. And so what you need in aging is to slow down. I mean, I wasn't going to be a good old person because I had been in the fast lane pretty much my whole life. What this did was not only being able to translate it to film, because I was actually the person having it, being effects-like. It also gave me a purpose in many ways of translating this for the audience. And I knew that so many people have this, and I just wanted to, make this film beautiful and feeling also the vulnerability of blindness and how that makes you feel in terms of like, oh, I won't be able to see to defend myself. Oh, I won't be able to see because I can't see these beautiful flowers, and I won't see this and I won't see that. So I started out in this like, I can't, I won't, I can't, I won't kind of space. But what it did is it slowly taught me, this is like so crazy and how beautiful our brains work. And so slowly as making the film, I got closer and closer to the monitor, the screen. And I was like about this close towards the end of it. But I felt there must be some reason that I'm feeling this macular. There is something I have to say about it. And if I could translate all the peoples who have macular, one of the biggest things I would say that happens to them is that nobody understands what it's like unless you have it. And for this, I wanted to express in visuals and sound what it actually is like to lose your sight. And along the way, I started to slow down. So I started going, oh, what else can I do? Because at the beginning of it, somebody said, well, what hobbies would you like to do now? And I went, hobbies? I don't know. I have no idea what hobbies, because I've been in film so long. This extraordinarily interesting transformation happened to me. And then concurrent with having parts of the film be seen, just in a small venue, of this woman coming to me and said, all of a sudden, my kids understand how I see. If I can just help one family, that would be enough. That would be okay. That their relatives and the people taking care of them understand what it's really like visually, because they can see. Like Charles Bonnet syndrome is a very serious kind of eye disease, but people used to get locked up in the loony bin for what they were seeing. And so I felt a really camaraderie and with like, I never was without that group of people who have macular. They were always there. I never felt that they were someplace else. I just felt the spirit of everyone come with me on this adventure. And eventually, when my eyesight got much worse, I call myself blindish, because I can still see shapes, but I can't read anything. I can't see faces. There's a lot of stuff I can't see. But one day, walking on our boardwalk, and with macular, you have only peripheral vision, and you don't have any central vision, and usually, and almost all the time, you only have black and white, right? So, and I kind of lived through that kind of transition. And then one day I was walking down the boardwalk, as I was saying, and all of a sudden I looked over, and this plant, Vitex agonist castus, all of a sudden was bright purples and blues. And then I walked a little further, and there was this bright, beautiful red trumpet vine. And I went, brain, you're bored. You're going to invent color in your brain, because I knew this was not scientifically possible. And so I just thought, this is my own camera, right? It's my own camera into macular degeneration and all the remarkable things that your brain can do to get a second like a parallel kind of line to losing with this line also that's gaining, right? Your brain is marvelous. I love our brains. And so I started really understanding what all the moving characters and all that kind of stuff was. And I just sort of looked at it and I went, wowie, man, that's really weird. And it kind of reminds me of the 60s. And so anyway, that's sort of just the preliminary of macular degeneration. But I learned to take it as a lesson. I took it as a journey, and that I should learn something from this switch from filmmaking to slowing down a little bit. And I think it saved my life. I really do.
Well, Vivien, I want to compliment you on how well you documented the vision loss experience, learning to use a cane. There are moments when you're in groups with other people with vision loss and everybody's talking about their journey. You really opened up your world of vision loss and how you were coping and adapting. And thank you for talking about Charles Bonnet syndrome too, the hallucinations that people get when they have more advanced vision loss. It's a very common thing, and there's nothing wrong. It's just, as you say, your brain is kind of filling in for you
Right,
with its own ideas, which can be a little crazy.
Yeah. I think
But
people have been put into loony bins because they saw a giraffe in a tree or something. And like I saw Mark Twain. Like, why the heck did I see Mark Twain? I mean, it's so crazy. And the guy who played Mark Twain, a dear friend of mine, we kind of put him in the tree. And he said, I as soon as I played the part of Mark Twain, I went and read all his books. And I went, that's so cool, Gary. That is so cool, because he really got interested in it. He's a sighted person. Of how cruel that must have been for people in the 1800s and all the way up to 1973, I think. They finally realized that this was not crazy time. This was the effect of, losing sight.
right. Exactly. It took a little research and investigation. And, as you watch the movie and we listen to you now, you've had these life experiences of great richness and growth and also loss. And do you think your life experiences helped you prepare for the AMD journey?
Definitely. Yeah, I think one of the things that I'm very happy about is that I have kind of the kind of brain that I can re-identify myself, my true self, in a particular situation. From my earlier times of being more interested in people who are different from each other, whatever, I allowed myself to now take on a brand new identity. And it goes to the white cane. In the film, I really wanted the white cane to be something other than a source of embarrassment when one was out. I know several people who, rather than take out a white cane, will fall, because they can't see where they're going or anything. And so I thought, oh, that's so sad, because I would like to make, the white cane like really fun and really goofy. And so I named her Supernova Cane. And I thought also I'd like to make it a little sensual because nobody's ever done that, you know. And also I think it would be really fun, and it is a mind change completely when you see the cane in VWR, or Vivien's Wild Ride. And so it was fun to play those with those kind of archetypes. And that was like, it was like the whole brain set of the 60s, right? And like imagining different things and psychotropic visions and things like that, which are really helpful to me for being able to interpret, not that I was going raving mad, but that I was experiencing some look into this fascinating world of sight loss. And I don't want to, turn it into rainbows and unicorns or anything, because it's really, really tough. But it having practiced really a wide kind of fruitful life, it really prepared me for seeing the beauty in the ordinary. And that really helped a lot. And I think it got me to slow down because I was going to slam into a wall or something if I didn't. And it just accepted it. And I said, welcome. So the tools for me have been the right kind of therapy. Tools for me have been imagining the world as senses, different senses. And also this inviting the adventure of it. Why was I selected to have this? I was selected because I could do it. And I had the strength to do it. And that it makes me a better person.
Vivien, some of my favorite moments in the movie, obviously your film editing career and your relationships and your daughter, those are all important elements. But some of the things that I remember most involve you learning like how to use a cane, showing you on the street, crossing the street, talking to people. You approached learning how to use a cane and navigating the world with an open mind, and you're just talking to people on the street, and there's courage there. There's an openness there that, as you're talking, I think really comes out in the movie. And I'm guessing maybe the way you grew up helped prepare you to address AMD with a more open, if I can dare to say, welcoming attitude.
Right. I mean, it's the exact opposite of what you think is working. And that appealed to me to say, how can I work with my brain about welcoming this? Because it seems the opposite of what you would actually want to do. It would be, why do this to yourself?
And I want to close out our conversation by going back to the movie. Yes. Because you worked on all these movies. You have a lot of credits and great moments working with people like Francis Ford Coppola and doing some really important documentaries that we didn't even have a chance to talk about. But what inspired you to make a movie about yourself and you're the narrator? That was a pretty bold move.
Well, it's really interesting. I worked really hard on the narration because it wasn't very good in the beginning. And I have, Deanne Borchet-Lim and my editor at the end, Eric Ivey, were so, so helpful in getting to that voice that you now hear in the film. I started out where wasn't what I call dropping in, right? To drop in something that's very honest. I had to go through these phases of saying, okay, now this is reality. And then go, okay, deeper, right? And they helped me immeasurably go deeper into this, what was really at the core of what I was talking about, of really the dialogue the narration that would say something about the scene, but not too much. And invite the audience in, basically, with via the narration. And it carries the story, for sure, the narration, but it also, the visual part, like rests in music, it carried something very important, which the amount of time somebody needs in an audience to recover and then go through a brand new experience with the next scene. So I drew from all of the things that I had the greatest mentors in the world. I mean, there I was with, David Lynch and Francis Coppola and Saul Zaentz, the producer, just amazing. And each one of them, I learned something new. And then I thought, I'm going to do this film because I have all this backdrop of people helping me, being mentors, and that I want to now give back. And so I just thought, Coppola would do this, and, it'd be like opera, right? And then somebody else would do this. And I just thought, okay, what is the truth, and what do I want to see in my own film? And it took 7 years. And it was one of the hardest things I've ever done in my life. I got terribly ill during the process of it. But it was such a catharsis of going back to those very difficult times of losing my daughter, all the stuff that happens after that. And it's just, I got so much. Can I give back? How do I serve? And that's what really prompted me to do this film. And in a way, it was a love letter. I know it sounds preposterous, but it was a love letter to people like my daughter. This is what it's like to be a birth mother. In fact, we just finished a webinar about adoption, and it was the largest group I think ever accumulated in one place of birth mothers. They're still afraid to come out of the dark and shame of all of that. Usually the media is about the adoptee, which it should be, but also to note for the first time really that there's a voice for the unwed mother. It's okay. We can come out of the shadows now.
And I have to say, as the movie unfolds and we learn more about your daughter, I guess I'm giving a little away here. They're such wonderful, beautiful moments. And I'm glad that you really put yourself out there. And you said the movie was a catharsis for you. And I would say not only do we as viewers experience your catharsis, but there's a universality where we have our own catharses because we all have loss and fear and things that you don't expect. Sometimes they're good things, sometimes they're really challenging. And so the movie, again, has a lot of universal themes, and I think that's what makes it so powerful. And of course, it's brilliantly edited, and I want to leave people with this teaser, and I'm not going to I'm not going to give away these lines, but the opening line of the movie is brilliant. And the closing line of the movie is brilliant. And they're very different, but it just shows what a great piece of art Vivien's Wild Ride is. And thank you for sharing your story and making this movie. And again, I think it's something that all of us can really not only enjoy, but gain insights into our own journeys from, whether we have vision loss or not. And Vivien, again, thank you and your crew and your partner, Karen and Deanne. And I know there's a lot of other people that appear in the movie. People are just going to have to watch it to meet your quote unquote family. And again, it's on PBS. Very easy to find. If you Google Vivien's Wild Ride, it'll take you right there. And it's, again, got audio descriptions and closed captioning. And I strongly encourage everyone to enjoy it. So thank you again, Vivien, for joining us on the podcast. It's been wonderful to have you.
Thank you very much. What great questions. Thank you.
Well, thank you. And Eve Orcutt, thank you for your help in recording and production. And listeners, thanks as always for joining the Hope and Focus podcast. It's great to have you, and we look forward to having you back for the next episode.
Whether you live with vision loss or love someone who does, this space is for you. To learn more about Hope and Focus and join us in advancing treatments for LCA, visit hopeandfocus.org and connect with us on social media @HopeandFocus1. Together, we are bringing hope into focus.